Hello and welcome to one of the two channels on YouTube. Today, we're going to be talking about the other one in a Cain and Abel type situation where one of us is going to die at the very end.
I mean, if you look at the two of them, I wonder who you'd bet on.
No, you can't skip ahead to find out. That's illegal. Legendary Drops is, in his words, a vehemently non-political YouTuber.
Activist adjacent, socially progressive lens that
whose popularity has absolutely exploded over the past year by successfully capitalizing on the very lucrative market of giving safe space handjobs to gamers who want to roleplay oppression.
well, not saying
This is what I really have started to dislike in my political video essays or cultural video essays is just how out of the gate they are. You know, it's like, come on guys, like, can't we be, I know it's YouTube, it's clicky, you gotta get, you know, the interest going, you gotta get them in, you gotta give something for Papa. But he's talking about Bayonetta 2 review, pointing out the sexualization, by the way. Okay, so let's hear what Legendary Drop said.
it overtly, they were saying that this is the kind of content that shouldn't exist and you shouldn't be okay with liking it.
He does.
Yes, I've heard that plenty of times. So if anything, Crimes New Roman's going to have to refute that portion, because if I remember correctly, that review he's referring to is one where they actually docked points on a game because the protagonist was too sexualized, which in my opinion, and I'm going to say you can't do that, but obviously you can do anything. You can do anything you feel like, but I would not consider that. I mean, if you're going to complain about the aesthetics, complain about the overall aesthetics, I guess. You know, I don't know. I am all for sexy things being sexy, especially in this pornographic world we live in. Just the idea of just a sexy lady in an outfit is pretty tame, I would say. And some women like being hot and tall and sexualized and heroic. It's definitely one thing to have the heroine of your game be sexualized in a powerful way than it is for some, to go to a strip club in GTA or to like get a sex worker in the Grand Theft Auto series. No, I was thinking Cyberpunk. That, if you're going to if you're going to get upset about anything, it'd probably be that, where it's more just a novelty activity versus like the actual expression of the main character.
This by not so subtly smuggling his clear lack of understanding about pretty much anything he talks about in constant appeals to consensus and cherry-picked examples, absolutely slathered in rhetoric that feels like it's coming straight out of Fox News.
They will try to denigrate you, isolate you, cancel you, and ultimately silence you completely.
The media controls how these games are framed and who sees them. When they start pushing ideology over insight, it stops being criticism and it starts becoming coercion.
This is a response to an article advocating for better representation. Anti-copyright dancing me. Okay, that's dumb. No, I get it. I get why he's trying to say that. That is boiling. Advocating for better representation is such a thought-ending statement, or a conversation-ending statement. It's like, yeah, how was it arguing for better representation? Was it arguing that representation should come before gameplay and should become before artistic, expression? Because in that case, I while it's something that should be considered along the pathway, it shouldn't be the highest priority, in my opinion. It is not the focal point of game design. It is not the focal point of storytelling. It is something that the people who want representation must create their own, if you will, and they will. I mean, there will be artists out there who will create the representation that they so need in the world. I earnestly believe that. It shouldn't just be some sort of blanket you throw over everything.
They want to make it impossible for anyone to preach or speak the traditional doctrine of Christianity regarding husbands, wives, and children.
You alienated your audience. You scared developers into silence. You turned your platform into a weapon. Then you pointed it at the very industry that once embraced you.
The title on the screen said this is in response to an article that said fascism bad. Yet again, calling fascism bad. Yet again, boiling an article down to one maybe thesis idea versus all the nuances that come within the article. That I just don't, if you're going to refute these, and this is a 50-minute long video, so hopefully he gets to it, but I think you need to get into the content of the article as well as what Legendary Drops said to it, instead of boiling it down to what like sound bites of what he said in his long and well-written response. That usually goes pretty much point by point. If he's going to go point by point, shouldn't you, Crimes New Roman?
And it's always unwise to seek political advice from someone who gets paid $100 million a year to bounce a ball.
And in some cases, the world is on fire, but what are you going to do about it? You make video games.
And this is
sorry, I'm just going to click back really quick. He don't want people talking about politics in video game articles. Polygon did this to themselves. Well, Polygon did do this to themselves, so you're correct about that. They just keep on keeping on over there at Polygon. But I mean, I don't see how that's so wrong for him not to want that. And also, if if the journalists are going to talk about politics, shouldn't their the response, the people who are responding to them also speak about politics? I mean, yet again, it's almost like it's hard not to talk about politics in a world where everybody is talking about politics about everything, or at least it felt that way for like the last 10 years or so, the last decade. Everything's political. People took that to heart. I think that was, kind of like one of those statements like everything's political, just like that was one of those like truisms that wasn't really true. And then some people took it as like God-given wisdom. Well, a non-space deity, non-deity given wisdom. I don't know. and all of a sudden everything had to be about politics. So I understand the frustrations that he was going through. Yet again, I don't think it, and if maybe Legendary Drops means something very specific, maybe it's slightly, some people would call it dog whistly by calling himself non-political. I think he is political, but in a positive way in comparison to like what else is out there. I think he's a good reaction. I mean, there's a reason I call them reactionaries to this much more progressive, doctrine. There's another YouTuber called Mantis Wave, I believe, who calls it the cathedral. And I'm just happy that people are speaking out against the cathedral.
Is on fire, but what are you going to do about it? You make video games.
And this is extremely successful
Exactly.
when it comes to appealing to people like him who would...
Exactly. As somebody who's, hey, look at that. It might not be a video game, but it is a game. And, while we do take culture and philosophy and all that into consideration, I never for once, consider this to be a political statement here. It's a cultural statement at most. In fact, I just prefer that word in general. I think I'm going to have to define this eventually. Might as well do it here. But I don't like the term political. Political is the dog and pony show that goes on in Washington, D.C., where you trade this for that. And, I'll vote for your thing if you vote for my thing. And if you kill that bill, that's politics. I don't want to say boring, but it's like its own beast. What we're talking about here is culture. The culture of especially specifically for us, if you're listening to me and understand me, most likely the culture of America. I think that's a very important topic, and something that has been almost been through a lot of big events that have been like slapping it in the face. That gif of the woman who's just gets pie after pie, the mascot just puts pie after pie in her face. That's what it feels like American culture has gone through probably since the 60s. We could go, it's probably since World War II, guys. Let's face it. It's been nonstop. But especially with the invention of the internet in our palms, the iPhone, the Android, websites, constantly notifying us. So, like I said, I'm not saying that I'm definitely not a Republican. I'm definitely not a Democrat, but I definitely think that there are some values that maybe people are trying to get thrown out. That the little classic, throwing out the baby with the bathwater. I think that baby's holding on to the edge of the tub right now. So I'm not opposed to Legendary Drops, speaking up when he thinks it needs to be spoken up.
Much rather believe that their daddy's special perfect.
Oh wait, just curious. Crimes New Roman has 15.5k subscribers as of this recording of this video. So just remember, there's the envy in his eye might be as green as the screen behind me.
I plopped in the center of the universe instead of a human being with flaws who lives in a world made of complex systemic issues and, in my case, is also very handsome with fantastic fashion sense. At the time of my writing, his most recent video is titled Polygon Did This to Themselves, in which he responds to the awful news of Polygon being sold to the digital sweatshop known as Valnet and their employees being hit with mass layoff by verbally dancing on their graves and saying that if they had just changed with the times to be a gamer semen farm like his YouTube channel, then that...
Show me where he's wrong. Most companies defeat themselves from the inside. I mean, whether it be because of the content that they wrote and nobody wanted to keep up with them, the way they displayed their website with unrelenting advertisements, or just the times changing and people moving naturally to YouTube because they'd rather watch their content than read it. And I'm somebody who thinks that reading has its place, but I feel like more and more that's going to become something people want to do in books, not on articles on pixelated screens. I think that reading is best suited for being away from your device. And unfortunately, when it's a written article in your web browser versus a video essay or reaction content in your YouTube feed, who's going to win? So maybe Legendary Drops is wrong about why Polygon shuttered, but they were going to shutter. This is just, I don't know how I feel about the people who lost their jobs, but this is in some ways what they might have, one of the risks they signed up for. This has been a games journalism in general has been on decline. And it's kind of figuring out like how it can exist. And Polygon, I guess, presented a business model that couldn't, or at least not in the way that the journalist would have wanted or thrived in. So that's the gravity is just taking effect.
Definitely wouldn't have happened. He uses this awful event to basically just air his own personal...
Let's see, already another disagreement. Awful event. I don't think it's awful. It's just an event. I would say September 11th, 2001 was an awful event. I would say the invasion of Iraq, the shock and awe, that was an awful event. I'm sure that by not mentioning certain things, I'm just like, those are the biggest two that came up on the top of my head. I mean, I'm sure, insert your awful event here, maybe in the comments. What awful event did I forget to mention? Was it worse than Polygon shutting down? Probably. Philip Seymour Hoffman dying. That's a more awful event than Polygon getting shut down. Jesus Christ.
And rather predictable grievances with other people having opinions on things and how those opinions are wrong and bad and led them to justifiably losing their jobs.
I know people want to point out the writers and they are the ones that are writing it, but you have...
Oh my God. I mean, look, brother, there's a lot of different things you could do to do this whole copyright dance. This is the most obnoxious one. You are making me want to just get out of your video 2 minutes and 51 seconds into it. And I have listened to your videos before, and that's the key. I listen to your videos, and I can usually get through them. I don't agree with you all the time, but Crimes New Roman, I can listening to your videos usually goes down pretty well. Watching your video right now, challenge.
Editor. How did you have jobs? You don't have them anymore, but how did you have jobs? They used to have the audience, but they don't have that anymore. The reader, the gamer, the people that they need to be able to have a job in the first place, they became insignificant to them, or an enemy in some cases. And when you turn your back on the people that keep you employed, well, you find yourself unemployed. Odd how that works.
It's actually very disgusting. And
What was disgusting? My God, I'm 3 minutes into this video. Oh, fuck me. If Asmongold, if you're watching his video, if you watch Crimes New Roman, it's going to take you 4 hours to get through this. Good God.
cherry on top is that at the end of this very non-political video,
I don't talk about politics.
he hopes that the poor, unemployed souls can take some advice he has so graciously given throughout.
Yeah. Put the fries in the bag.
Which basically boils down to appeal to me. This video is basically the perfect
No, we're a collective. Appeal to us. Aren't you a collectivist? Come on now.
microcosm of the non-political mind. It shows so beautifully how no real praxis or
Okay. This is so strawman-y, so Reddit coded. This division of political games, non-political games.
curiosity towards the world you live in can turn you into someone with too much confidence, too little empathy, and a mindless follower of a status quo that would grind you into biomatter if it meant a 0.01% profit increase year over year.
I disagree. Who is he talking to? Who is he talking about? I almost had to go back and listen to that entire portion again because it was dribble. Let's go back. Okay, it's pretty much at the start of this. So, okay, and I do want to state for the record, I think politics in video game is just fine. I think even if I disagree with the politics in the video game, it's just fine. Video games are a vessel for often storytelling. They can be. And they can get away with a lot of more subtle, intricate stories. Like, it could be a really good spice because of the, as Tim Rogers puts it, the what is it called? The prestige tour, the environmental storytelling. So I'm not anti. So here's one of my biases. I'm not anti-politics in video game. I'm anti-bad video game. Don't waste my time. So that said, let's go and look. Let's stop looking at the background and hear what he has to say during this next little rant.
Basically the perfect microcosm of the non-political mind. It shows so beautifully how no real praxis or curiosity towards the world you live in can turn you into someone with too much confidence, too little empathy, and a mindless follower of a status quo that would grind you into biomatter if it meant a 0.01% profit increase year over year.
Okay, I disagree with everything he just said there about like Legendary Drops and how he presents himself. Legendary Drops is obviously a curious mind. He was a construction worker who worked his way into being a video game journalist, doing that thing that we all hate the term, but basically bootstrapping himself into having a YouTube presence. I mean, and he, in his last video, I think it was maybe before Crimes New Roman made this one, he mentions all the different hats. Oh, the one about the indie games that were the indie game developers and how it's so scary for the industry for having such lean indie game studios without room for specialists and all these other departments, and less people will be getting paid and having jobs. And he just pointed out how he worked his way up through his construction job and learned to wear many different hats, learned to do a lot of different jobs. And you know what? That's how you become a leader in your field, is you learn how to do all the jobs and you learn how to, be where you're needed. I not to toot my own horn again, but I would not be sitting here today if it wasn't for the efforts I did to make this game here that's sitting in front of me. And I wouldn't have made that game if I hadn't learned how to do everything necessary to make a game. It did some of it good and some of it bad, some of it boring, but I've gone through every single hoop, and I've gone through it with my creative partner, and he's helped me out along the way, and I've helped him out, and we've just kept each other motivated. But we have become better more well-rounded people because of it. And I'm not going to sit here and denigrate a guy because he had a vision for what he could do, and he's accomplishing it, and he's accomplishing it well. And I also really did not like your gamers don't understand video game journalism or reviews. That was a bad video, brother. Like, I could have done this with that video. You know, this is going to be such a long session. My camera might stop recording. If this video stops short before I get through all this, it's because my camera ran out of data. Okay? But you do this thing. You do this thing I like to call your team, where you just pick and choose who represents your side and who represents the other side. And I think a great example is within that video where you said, what is it? Skill Up? Is it Skill Up? The YouTube reviewer of video games, who's very popular, very well polished, very well spoken. And you equated him to being the equivalent of like an IGN or a Polygon. He was in that sphere. And then you compared him to just a YouTube reviewer who was super anti-woke, representation of women in video games, droned on about it. Obviously, probably it had a bad breakup, or, you know, his mom was not in his life in the way that she needed to be. Who knows what that man's tragedy was. And I get it. Skill Up is 100%, like, he's a 10 out of 10 video game reviewer, one of the most professional. But I also think that he's closer he's in the same ballpark as that other YouTube reviewer, because he's a YouTube reviewer who's independent. And he's not a Polygon. He's not an IGN. He doesn't represent that side of the media. He's an independent media person. He's not part of the cathedral. And he even got thrown under the bus a little bit because of the him actually speaking out about, what was it, Dragon's Age, the Veilguard being a bad game, and it being a bad game probably because of all the issues with consultation going on in the industry. He lost some fans. I know that my brother, who is a little less, you know, a little bit more in line with Crimes New Roman here, in line with you, he said that made Skill Up basically a untrusted person to him. So, you know, come on. I think that, you know, you can't play your team like that. You know, you got to go out there. You got to you got to dance with the one you brought, brother. You got to pull an IGN reviewer, a Polygon reviewer. You needed to be, what is her name? Alyssa Miscante. You needed to bring up her articles to defend your point. Cherry picking Skill Up was such a lame move.
I only like to make videos about a specific weird little guy if I think I can add something meaningful to the conversation. I don't go after redundant, low-hanging fruit, and seeing how there really is no conversation around Mr. Drops that I've seen, considering how big he is, the white blood in my veins is absolutely itching to colonize this untouched territory.
Got to go and get your bread, don't you? Anyways, well, I'm glad to be having the conversation with you. Shall we continue?
Some people, this depiction of traits I gave sounds quite...
Wait, the traits that he has up on screen. Oh, it's my girlfriend is... I think my girlfriend is doing window shopping for a motorcycle. God, I'm going to be riding bitch soon enough. Okay, the traits on screen, in case you're listening. I know, as a YouTube listener, I enjoy it when the people who are watching the video stop and read things. Non-political, hypocritical, ideology, YouTuber, gamer, enlightened, centrism. That's fence sitting, by the way. Remember, join us here on the fence. Radical centrism. Could I say that? That's what fence sitting is. We take those. We take the boards that you put your little signs on, and we take them apart, and we create a fence, and we sit upon it. Virtualolic. I guess that's supposed to be like somebody who's... That almost sounds like a word from the 90s. Like he's so addicted to cyberspace, he's a virtualic. I can't even say it. It's a bad word. That's the word sucks.
Familiar. But what interests me about Mr. Drops, and why I think he's worth mentioning to begin with, is that he positions himself ideologically, but not in the political way though, apart from the more extreme versions of the gamer rage content farm genre he engages with. A true both extremes bad centrist, which allows him to have significantly wider reach. This allows him to peddle the same non-political opinions that are magically almost always just against the left-leaning stuff to the more reasonable gamers who...
Well, you are the most vocal and annoying, and it is like basically the consensus of cultural power at the moment, in my opinion. The problem is not diversity and inclusion. The problem is their version of it. Yet again, I don't see how that's if these. Okay, remember, he's pulling these quotes that are on screen. It looks like 3 of them from the video, The Real Impact. So if you wanted to go and watch that video to see their context, please do. But he's pulled 3 quotes. He says there's a lot more like this on the video. You can go and look for yourself. But remember, he's cherry picking right now. He's cherry picking the quotes that he wants to present to you to make his argument look good. This has happened before. It'll happen many times over. This is like how, what is it? The Ghostbusters 2016 Ghostbusters, but we're women now, handled their backlash campaign, their response to the backlash campaign, which was to say, instead of them focusing in on the people who are saying this movie looks like garbage, why would you make this? Which is the question everybody should have been asking after seeing the trailer. But they went in and were like, women, found the comments that are like, women, Ghostbusters, boo. And then they just emphasized those. And that was, and it's almost like they learned something. I don't even remember that movie being successful. I know I didn't see it, had no plans on it, but it must have been somewhat of a successful way of retaliating in the, there was a word for it, the feminist remakes, kind of like the feminization of Hollywood. And they must have realized that was going to be a safe bet, or at least, a working tactic, because then they really put the pedal to the metal and made that anytime something got negative reviews, the response was the misogynist on the other side are tanking this movie's score. It's a harassment campaign. No, you made a shit film. Or at the very least, a film nobody asked for. Anyways, okay, so the 3 comments on screen right now are, they never cared about art, only control. I think that's a pretty fair argument against the, kind of forced diversity, quote unquote, forced diversity, the quotas, the consultation, make games by consultants instead of games by designers. DEI is another manifestation of moral panic. In the 90s, it was pushed by religious outsiders to gaming. Yet again, this doesn't seem like that. It's not like he pulled a comment that said, the things that I can't say into the microphone because I don't want this video to be demonetized. I'm probably already there. Well, I don't have monetization, but I want it to do well in the algorithm. I want you to see this video. So, and then the last one is the problem. I think I already read this one. The problem is not diversity and inclusion. The problem is their version of it. And I agree. It's like it's the way that the consultation class of people need it done, the way that the committee, if you will, the cathedral needs it done is by, very specific quotas and checklists versus with the nuanced touch of somebody who's conscientiously trying to apply it. It's more of like, it's a top-down demand versus a bottom-up will to express something. When an artist, a writer, has to express something because it's demanded of them, you don't get the best results usually. And that's usually when the little rebellious kid in them comes out and intentionally tanks something.
For example, don't hate diversity. They just want it done the right way. Please go and watch his video. Check all of my sources, which are linked in the description below, because I want people to keep me honest in my critique, unlike some people who appear to never actually link anything in any of their descriptions for some reason. I hope you enjoy.
I mean, it could be that just seems like an interesting little piece of criticism to throw out at him. I mean, he cites within the video his sources. I mean, it would be convenient for him to link to, but I'm sure people who are interested could go and find it. It just can be annoying. You know, you just want to copy and paste like one document over and over again so you get the video uploaded. You know, we all can't. Some people have a more demanding schedule.
Going on this odyssey with me, because to be honest, I found it quite shocking, some of the things that he openly admitted to online, but I am quite thankful because it lets me make content. Also, Capri Sun, please sponsor me. I can't explain it, but
yet again, if I had watched your videos, I might have stopped, because I'm not going to take an opinion seriously of an adult man who drinks Capri Suns.
having a large box or tube is somehow like the most entertaining thing you could give to me. Like, I have spent probably the last 20 minutes just fucking around with this thing instead of actually recording this video. The place we begin, so I can properly guide you through his thought process, is not at the beginning of the video, but in the middle, where he brings up a Polygon article that they wrote recently about killing fascists in video games to maybe have a bit of relief from the state of things. And this is his response to that.
Bro, what the fuck is this? Have you ever thought about the fact that the vast majority of the gaming audience doesn't tune into this, likely aren't even paying attention to politics, and they see this extreme rhetoric and honestly veiled call for violence as weird and uncomfortable as hell? You write something like this, you publish this under the banner of a games journalism outlet, and then you wonder why you're sold off and your staff is laid off.
Now.
Yes. They're called normies. We have to appeal to them. Polygon is a website that I thought, until recently was trying to appeal to the normies. I didn't go there, but I just assumed that if it's one of the main video game websites, it'd just be reporting on what's happening in video games. So I do agree. Like, there's plenty of people who are just like looking for news on the latest, Call of Duty or whatever, who just want to get a preview article about that. And they would go and see this video game kills fascists and probably be turned off a bit. I mean, it's a cute title. It seems like it could have been an episode of the podcast. I'm sure Polygon had some sort of podcast that you'd have to be a hardcore fan of to get into. And I'm sure that somebody like Legendary Drops might even go and dig up that podcast and criticize it if he's as militant as he says, as you're claiming. But still, it doesn't seem like a front pager for a publication that's about an industry, like coverage of an industry. My opinion.
Regardless of your opinion on this article and whether you think killing fascists is good or bad, it's good. Mow those fuckers down. The blatant open admission that this guy doesn't care, listen to, or participate in what he considers politics,
I don't talk about politics,
I think is exceptionally telling and the first piece of our little puzzle here. Mr. Drops makes the blanket assertion through appeal to consensus that because he doesn't give a shit about the world he lives.
If he plays that I don't care about politics or I don't talk about politics clip again, I'd like to get the rest of the context of it. I want to know if he might have been clarifying what he thinks. Like, maybe he's like me, like what I said at the beginning of this, near the beginning of this video. Who knows how long ago it is? Time doesn't make sense anymore. It's taken me an hour to get 7 minutes into this video, it feels like. But if you're going to play that clip, I think you need to, because it obviously felt like the beginning of a statement. And if I can go and, maybe claw that up. In fact, I'm going to write that down as something to do. Look up LD's I don't talk about politics clip. Do you have that linked in your description? Do you have a link to that timestamp in that live stream you did?
Outside of how it affects him personally, the audience doesn't either. I want to be very clear. Plenty of gamers are like this as well, as proof.
Yeah, again, got to go back and watch
Doesn't either.
and read this. Gamers, when Fallout, GTA, BioShock provide satire of commentary on modern society and capitalism, you thumbs up. Why can't video games just be video games and not political? Gamers, when a game has trans person in it. I mean, I don't know who this person is, and that's, you know, obviously taken out of context, and there's projection going on here. I can believe it. I can believe somebody online said it. I mean, it's the thing. This is the whole your team mentality, where it's like, if I don't like what you're saying, I'm going to find people who I think are saying something adjacent enough but dumber and say that they're on your side. So it's like a meme of an argument. It's very bad. Also, I did not care for the politics in BioShock Infinite in terms of, well, I didn't care for that game. I shouldn't judge the politics because I don't think it communicated much about politics through the gameplay. So, yeah. Oh, and also, yeah, GTA. I don't like GTA satire. I've said this before. I'm not a big fan. I'm not a big fan of how GTA sees America, through the lens of those Scottish guys. I feel like they watch too much TV and movies, and or they are really radical people, in terms of they're the kind of guys who end up in rooms with the worst people in the world, and I can imagine that, So, but like I said, I don't care for GTA's take on politics and their sense of humor.
Very clear. Plenty of gamers are like this as well, as proved by his sub count. But I think it's funny that he just kind of can't admit this personally. I also love the subtle implication he's made that gamers are fascists. I think that's extremely funny. This is also
I disagree with that assertion. I don't think he ever made that claim. I don't think even you'd have to really be taking his words out of what is it? There's a bad read. You'd have to have a bad read on his takes. Prove me wrong.
first example of a signature move from his rhetorical toolkit, which is the shocked disbelief that anybody who is not him could find things he does not like interesting and valuable.
When someone likes a thing, I don't. Well, I'm just going to point out, not if that's like what your argument is right now. I think that a lot of people didn't like the thing that you liked because those games didn't do too hot. The video game industry is on quite a losing streak, wouldn't you say? It seems like there's a lot of people out there who don't care for the games that are coming out for various reasons, and maybe these non-political political commentators might be onto something. You don't have to be political in order to talk about politics if it's all in the context of it working or not. Or were these government mandated games that we must have missed our the subpoena for us to have to buy them because they were correct in all their politics, and thus we must go and purchase them? The free market, man, it works itself out in the long run.
He has this unwavering
gamers, when they need to gatekeep journalism, they don't read in the first place. Okay, that's kind of funny, yeah. Please, don't read the journalism.
Faith that him and people like him are the true arbiters of interest, and makes the connection that these cherry-picked political things that he's seeing these outlets like Polygon publish is the reason why they're going under. This is how he confidently claims it's Polygon's fault for writing these articles and doing other things I'll talk about later that he doesn't like, for its collapse and people losing their jobs. He sees a thing he doesn't like. He sees Polygon going down. Therefore, these two things must be related. This is essentially the bread and butter of his entire video catalog, to be honest, and I wish the ghost of correlation does not equal causation would visit him this Christmas, because that would fix a whole lot of problems. Oh, and
wow, it sounds like you're about to lay out some journalism on us really quick, sir, because that is a big, that's a big claim. You're going to show us how Polygon fell and why it wasn't the quality or the content of the articles that they wrote. I'm interested.
by the way, basically all of the comments on the article are positive, and some even go further than the article.
More cherry picking. These are going by so fast, I don't think it's worth reading them. But, well, here, I'll read this one. Feeling oppressed, mad at the big bad right-wingers, monetarily support giant conglomerates who profit off of your cathartic inaction to actually do anything political. Here's the ones that we recommend. Middle class leftist Americans deserve the shit they've gotten themselves into if this is how they respond to living in an actual neo-Nazi state. Yeah, this is much more of like my like, you know, if we're going to talk leftism, this guy writing this is much more of my you know, the cut of my jib. Get out and start busting heads, please. Do not take all your rage and use it to play Final Fantasy VII Remake for God's sake. Great game, just not the point here. The financial stability dripping off this article makes me sick. Yeah, I mean, I more agree with this person because they are talking about action. They're not using, and that's the problem. I think yet again, this is a problem with Polygon or other news sites like this. All they can do is talk about our current environment in terms of consumerism, because all the thesis of their mission statement is, you know, a relationship to consumerism and more, I don't want to say ethical, it's not ethical, more conscientious, more connoisseur, becoming a connoisseur of consumption.
Itself, I just wanted to mention that. Incredibly based. But let's rewind a little bit. What was with that bit about scaring developers into silence that he dropped in the middle of that diatribe? You get a gold star if you know where this is going. You get an extra gold star if you like and subscribe or check out my Patreon or channel memberships and the little book club I'm trying out to learn and educate yourself with like-minded people who want to grow instead of just kind of jerking off your own opinion for 20 minutes at a time. Now with that
Yeah, you can jerk off your own opinion for 50 minutes at a time, it seems.
fun little bit of apolitical context, we can jump back to the beginning of the video, in which we can hear Mr. Drop state that after Gamergate, the harassment campaign,
Did he just really cite Wikipedia? This motherfucker. Bro.
everything
Wikipedia. Come on. And that you're going to use that as your entire proof that Gamergate was a harassment campaign, right? Are you going, I mean, this is a 50-minute long video. You're going to detail out your side, correct? Not just put a screenshot of Wikipedia on screen and say that's it and go, did all I have to do. Right?
changed, like when the Fire Nation attacked.
The turning point came with Gamergate 2014, a controversial flashpoint in the industry that changed the tone of games media pretty much across the board. While some outlets were a little bit more cautious, Polygon went all in, leaning into this activist-adjacent, socially progressive lens that they began to frame every game through identity politics. Suddenly, the reviews weren't about what a game did well, they were about what it failed to represent.
Playing that.
So you got articles from Polygon lined up in order to disprove this. I mean, I would think that's where you're going, right?
I don't engage in politics and the world around me clip was important contextualization for you to understand how he thinks that there was a shift to identity politics and away from the apolitical status quo that he loves to pretend was real.
I don't talk about politics.
I speak on some of this in my last video, which is very cool and you should check out. But artists and game developers like Copper Giloff and Rebecca Allen have been doing identity politics, like examining women's perception in gaming and technology since the 70s. Video and article linked below because I'm a good person. But mentioning them isn't really conducive to maximizing gamer milking potential, so it's also why maybe he
A little word of advice for anybody who's watching this video. If somebody goes out of their way to tell you that they are a good person, doubt.
doesn't seem to get that people could be concerned about the rise of right-wing extremism or something. I don't know. Also, unrelated, shout out to the very normal gamers who are casually making posts about shooting up the virtual pride parades that were confirmed to be in GTA 6. That's super good and cool and normal behavior that I definitely like a lot. This framework of thing used to be good, but thing now bad because of person.
Let's call a spade a spade. I'm not sure when it started, but journalism has been going down the shitter for a long time. I personally blame all the president's men. it made it to where journalism became a cool career instead of like a working class career. And thus it was invaded by upper class do-nothings, fail sons and daughters of, rich people who could afford to starve, basically. That's the thing. It's way easier to starve when you got be a starving artist or a starving filmmaker or a starving journalist when you got daddy's money to, get you Wendy's when you're hungry.
It's kind of a mainstay of his rhetorical toolkit, which after Gamergate, he then uses to really just air his personal grievances on their Bayonetta 2 and Kingdom Come Deliverance reviews. For the Bayonetta 2 review, he really doesn't seem to like that they actually called out her sexualization.
And I think their review of Bayonetta 2 is probably the best example of this, a mechanically brilliant action.
What is call out? What do you mean by call out, brother? Like, that they took that into consideration into giving the game a less positive review because she's a sexual. They already knew it's Bayonetta 2. What did you not play Bayonetta 1? Of course they would push it further. Okay, let's continue. It's going to take fucking forever.
Game well loved and reviewed across the board, and they knocked it down to a 7.5 out of 10 because the reviewer didn't like how sexy the main character was. Not because of the gameplay, not because of the performance, because of problematic sexualization. This is the kind of scoring that doesn't just confuse people, it infuriates them. Polygon wasn't just judging the game, they were judging the player. While not saying it overtly, they were saying that this is the kind of content that shouldn't exist, and you shouldn't be okay with liking it.
Man, I gotta say, he has a crazy stamp.
I would maybe say that last part of the statement might have gone a wee bit far, considering they still gave it an overall positive review. I don't know. Like, I'm not sure. I know that the IGN 7 is like, infamous in a meme. I'm not sure what Polygon's usual, like what their bell, I guess low watermark or whatever their medium watermark is. But I mean, that last statement might have been tiptoeing a little bit far, but I mean, I still think the sentiment was correct. It's like, if you're going to dock points for the artistic expression of the game's directors and staff and animators succeeding at what they set out to do. I mean, like I said, it's Bayonetta 2. Everybody who's going to play it knows what Bayonetta is from Bayonetta 1. And if they're not aware of it, they can become aware of it pretty quickly with the trailer. They're either going to like that aspect or not. It's not part of, in my opinion, it's not really something to be super critical about in a review for a video game. Reviews suck in general, that kind of, if it's not long form, and it hasn't been thought about for over a year, the consumer, the Roger Ebert style, I just went and saw 4 movies this week, all 4 movies are going out, and I wrote articles about each one of them so you can read about it before you go and decide which movie to see so you can spend your money the best as a consumer. It's kind of a shit method. It's kind of like a democracy. It's a horrible system, but it's the best we have. And, from that perspective, you should be like Roger Ebert often had really bad takes when one of his big blind spots, I believe, as a filmmaker was revolved around sexuality. And he would sometimes have bad takes on good movies. And it's hard to say objectively. This is art. There's no such thing as objective. But the consensus around Blue Velvet is kind of against Roger Ebert, and his reason for calling out Blue Velvet, it was all about the sexual depiction, sexual expression of that movie. And it just seems like a lot of baggage for one person to bring to each and every review when that is just an aspect of filmmaking. But yeah, the only way that most people would be able to go and see something erotic and sensual, or maybe a different kind of eroticism, would be to go to the theater and see what would be marketed as an average movie, and then you get wind up at the theater and you're seeing something way more sexual. And so maybe his spidey sense was a little too sensitive, and David Lynch's depiction of sexuality was too radical and extreme for him. But still, I don't think Bayonetta should have been judged negatively for its depiction of the sexualization of its main character, considering that was intentional and empowering, in my opinion, to the main character. Nor do I think Roger Ebert should have been so harsh on Blue Velvet, an American masterpiece, because of its depiction of sexuality, because it was dealing with those topics, and those topics were in conversation. It's like it's one thing if just out of nowhere in a movie that's like about, like most movies of those eras, which would just be about like, a police officer trying to figure out what's going on in the mafia underground, or, a journalist trying to figure out what's going on in the mafia underground. And then all of a sudden they have like a romantic, passionate sex scene, like near the end of the third act or the second act. That is, to me, way more, something to be critical of, because you probably didn't go to that movie to see, to get horned up, to get bricked up, if you will. You get glazed at the theater and you didn't expect it. All right, so let's get back into it.
To keep giving out all these hand jobs. What's that? It looks like a clip of his own words I'm about to use against him to foreshadow something coming later in the video.
They can't seem to accept that somebody might just not like the game, so they have to invent some entirely different narrative, one where they are noble warriors defending against some political invasion, and they have to tell themselves that any criticism of a game is part of some orchestrated culture war, as if...
He put up the Wikipedia article, again, Wikipedia, for hypocrisy. I mean, this one, possibly slightly more fair argument. But it is a road that's cutting both ways. I mean, maybe it takes one to know one in this situation.
Couldn't possibly be that somebody just has independent thoughts about a game.
Despite the perceptions of what people might think about her character, I think it's pretty fascinating how offended he got about a singular mediocre review of the game amongst a swell of positivity. And one of the only ones that I read, by the way, that actually mentions the obvious sexualizations of the character.
I mean, if it was a Christian website that was like, oh, you might not want to play this game because your children will be, exposed to sexualization. I mean, I think he's making my point for me by pointing out that only Polygon made mention of this of this very specific and very artistic decision. Oh my God. I'm just making sure I have enough battery to get through this. Oh my goodness, I might have to restart. Okay, let's keep this. Well, no, don't do that. Okay.
Forbid people have their own opinions on a piece of art or be concerned about the portrayal of women in video games or society in general. I, for one, would never, ever do anything like that. Now, the Kingdom Come Deliverance review narrative is honestly a little bit more interesting to break down.
Then came their review of Kingdom Come Deliverance, where they called the game woefully bland and claimed that women in the game seem to only have 3 functions. They either perform as 2-dimensional sex objects, fetch water from a river, or do needlepoint. Ignoring the setting, 15th century Bohemia, ignoring Teresa, the woman that saves your life, protects you, and then shares one of the most emotionally grounded relationships that are in the game, ignoring the historical context entirely, because it didn't fit the narrative that they wanted to push.
The gist of the whole thing.
Yet again, where are you going with this, counselor? Because he just made a lot of great points. Are you about to refute what he just said?
Is one, he's kind of mad that they called it dull, despite it being very commonly known that it was an acquired taste kind of game.
That is not the clip that you played. That is not the words you're trying to use against him. Unless I didn't listen to the first part of what he said. He was talking about the the terminologies being used against the game, about the depiction of female characters. I don't remember hearing the thing about dull. Maybe I missed it. Let's go for it.
But he primarily chooses to selectively invoke historical realism to defend the potentially...
Selectively. That's a very load-bearing word there. This is a game that is known for its historical realism in the same way that it's known for being dull. So let's continue, because it's like, if he can, I'm pretty sure he's allowed to apply the words that the game makers would apply to it when discussing it and classifying it. They got slack last time that they released Kingdom Come 1 because of all the depiction stuff. They found a way to open it up more so they could try to get good boy points from the journalist.
And sometimes maybe sexist.
All right, let's see. The lords and their soldiers are stalwart and honorable almost to a man. The lone priest that I've met is gluttonous and snide. The foreign invaders are subhuman rapists. Women seem to have only 3 functions. They either perform 2-dimensional sex objects, fetch water from the river, or do needle pointing. I don't... The lords and the soldiers, I thought, are honorable almost to the man. The gluttonous and snide priest, I mean, that's like sounds like a Falstaff type. But the lords and the soldiers are stalwart, honorable almost to the man. I thought I've seen clips from the game. Sorry, I haven't played Kingdom Come Deliverance 2. I haven't played a lot of games, actually, I have to admit. I'm too busy making them. But the clips I've seen have depicted the lord that you fight for or are protecting, whatever word is the right word here. He seems like a bit of a prick and a bit of an asshole. He doesn't seem honorable at all. Also, I mean, how many lead characters can there be in a game? I mean, like, I know Kingdom Come Deliverance is a big game, but even a big game, how many protagonists or not protagonists, but main characters can you have that have agency and have, multiple scenes and story arcs that aren't just quest givers?
And racist elements of the game, seemingly completely unaware of criticism that has been leveled about the game's general historical portrayal of the time period, even outside of...
You're going to go into detail about that, right? Are we about to get into details? You're not just going to cite headline articles.
Women's stuff. I want to be clear here. I am very obviously not an expert on that time period, and I would bet almost anything that he isn't either. I also haven't played the game. I do not want to. To be honest, I don't really give a shit about it. What I am saying is that choosing to mindlessly believe something is wholly historically accurate to just shove off any criticism that you may not like is pretty bad. For example, he also...
I'm trying to figure out how that made sense. Look, I wasn't a big fan of the people saying like, "Whoa, black soldiers and female soldiers in the World War I game," because I was like, it's a video game, brother. Like, I forget, was that Battlefield 1 or I forget. You'll have to excuse me, but I remember that being a criticism that was brought up as, being outlandish, and I agreed at the time.
Also defends the weird-ass Final Fantasy 16 developers, saying that they don't want to put people of color in their game because of historical realism of the medieval time period or something like that. Like, yeah, man, I can really see that they appealed to the historical realism of the time period.
Yeah, I got it. Got to call them as I see them. Like, I got to stick to what I said. Final Fantasy 16 not having diversity in it has like less of a leg to stand on, especially if they went out of their way to have zero diversity.
Just because somebody says it's historically realistic and it appeals to your probably very limited understanding of what those time periods were actually like is kind of dangerous NPC level behavior.
What the hell does that mean? You're going to throw out the word NPC? Like, I thought that was like a buzzword that conservatives use to mostly refer to people like you. I mean, are you taking it back?
Fuck's sake, even just recently, orb movements of the earth, which is amazing and people should go watch, by the way, just did this super well done arc with one of the main female characters, Yolenta. And this is set during 15th century Poland. To quote one of the original articles I linked, retelling history is always a process of choosing which facts to highlight. It's impossible to show the entire scope of human experience. What's given weight or omitted entirely says more about a historian's interests than anything else. Again, I can't fact check the game, I can't fact check the articles, but what I can do is use my big little brain and think, maybe if there's some critique being leveled here and there is some historically conflicting information, maybe it's worth thinking about the framework with which people show certain facts or events from history, or how certain people are portrayed in a time period.
When are you going to acknowledge the fact that he said, hey, they leveled this criticism at the game even though there are good female characters? What, are you just ignoring? You could have cut that out if you're going to be this ignorant and cherry picky, and you could have gone and fact checked the game to fact check if they had good female characters. There's one amazing scene that I've seen so well acted by a woman, by a woman actress. Whoa, big surprise. Women are great at acting. Wonderful motion capture, wonderful voice performer, all done by a woman. I mean, I think that's the main thing he's saying here, is like that they're not even correct in their criticism.
No, man. Seems like basic thought process shit. Also, he's lying through his teeth saying that Polygon wasn't like this before Gamergate. Their rise son of
correct. He that is a kind of a big misspeak. They were always shit.
Review openly critiques the game's Disney-ass tactic of making the villains uniquely homosexual and feminine.
A tactic I love.
Which even runs counter to those traits being largely accepted in that society that the game is set in, being Rome. The very uniquely non-homosexual setting. And to be completely honest, I don't think he intentionally lied or omitted this. I just don't think he actually cares to check if a lot of what he's saying is, true. He really just is kind of a checklist of all the usual,
The checklist: game journalist activism. DEI needs to be done right. Yeah, but probably not being mandated from top down, but just a ethical consideration that we all move forward in our lives with. Gamergate good. Which side? We know which side you're talking about. No politics in video games. Wants games to be taken seriously, yet only in a very specific ways. I don't know if I've heard him that one doesn't strike a chord to being specific. This is more of a generalized list than it is about legendary drops. I think legendary drops wants to be taken seriously. I think he maybe wants games to be taken as seriously as they intend to be taken. Modern audience, yeah, something about Veilguard. He'd spelled that wrong. He spelled Vigard. The market demands white straight males be appeased. Was maybe catered to, and I'm just going to say that that's kind of a demographic reality, brother. That's not a if you were making video games in Africa, wouldn't you think that most of your main characters would be black and African? Same in China. So I don't know. Ugly women. I reacted to Asmon's video about attractiveness in video games. You guys can go and watch that one. Historical realism is when no good women or black people. The Last of Us 2, bad. Foreshadowing. The Last of Us 2. If a game demands that, if a game's going to tell me that you're a bad person for enjoying this, you're a bad person for playing this, you're a bad person, you're playing as a bad person doing bad things, I'm going to stop playing the game. I stopped playing Shadows of the Colossus. I agree it's a masterpiece. I don't want to go and do bad things. That's not what I signed up for video games. It's probably why I don't play GTA. And so many other games. Cyberpunk, I'd probably have a hard time playing. I like playing heroes. Like when I play a video game. Whenever I play a video game, I choose the good path. Whenever it's an RPG where you get to be as bad as you want to be, or as a saint. I'm a little saint. And so I think that calling The Last of Us 2 bad because, I mean, maybe if it was a movie, see, movies, TV shows, that's where I like to watch bad people do bad things. There's that level of like, you know, voyeurism or whatever you want to call it that allows me to not vicariously live, but just observe, be a passenger and not feel as though the decisions being made up on screen are reflective of my own moral compass. Anyways, that's me. But you know, I think that a game, you know, I think yet again, Last of Us 2 bad is such a simple expression to try to belittle so many people out there in their opinions. And yes, there are people who said Last of Us 2 bad because woman, Last of Us 2 bad because of diversity, but there was other people who said Last of Us 2 is bad because I wanted to, like, legitimately wanted to play as Joel. Not me, but, you know, the character. I wanted to play as Joel. I wanted to see Joel and Ellie. I wanted to see another story with them. You know, I didn't want to, you know, play as Abby. You know, what other game got, which is another game that's a masterpiece that got raked over the coals at the time, was Metal Gear Solid 2. If Metal Gear Solid 2 had, you know, it took years by some people's accounts, quite a few years for that game to be appreciated in retrospect. And it was getting it from both sides, because there was the side on Metal Gear Solid 2 of like, spoiler alert, you don't play as Snake for long, and you play as some, you know, femboy named Raiden, quite the twink. And so people who didn't like the switcheroo got upset. And let's face it, I think that's fair in The Last of Us. Joel was an aspirational figure, for better or worse, for a lot of people out there. They wanted to go and enjoy the world, at least with him at Ellie's side. So for him to die so early in the game, that was kind of a betrayal. And that might have been not what people wanted to buy. I'm sure a lot of people had an idea of what was going to happen by the time they bought it, but still. And secondly, Metal Gear Solid 2, going back to that, it also got it from the more critical, like more gameplay, my people. It got it from the side of like, it's like cutscene after cutscene. You walk through a hallway, you get a cutscene. You do this, you get a cutscene. Or like they wanted more of like long sequences of espionage stealth. So like, you know, it wasn't taken as seriously by those two groups. And then, you know, a few years later, everybody realized that it was a prophetic masterpiece of like philosophy. And once you start playing it with that lens, it becomes way easier to enjoy. Quite a masterpiece.
Gamer type opinions. Like, let's play a little game here to see if I'm right. As of recording, I haven't actually watched this video yet, which is titled Naughty Dog Completely Lost the Plot.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm willing to bet that he's gonna say something about like Neil Druckmann and ID.
Okay, so far pretty easy guesses, because Neil Druckmann is the director of Last of Us 2, writer of Last of Us 1, and the director of this new intergalactic game. Oh, I made a trailer about, not a trailer. I made a video about my opinions on the Intergalactic 2 trailer. Spoiler alert, it's not just the way she looks. It's a bad trailer, bad storytelling. Go and watch that video. I'll break down what they missed, and I think it would pair nicely with this other video I saw recently that was about narcissistic characters as heroes and why they fail. And they also talk about the Intergalactic trailer in that. So watch my video and watch that other one too. I'll see if I can get a link in the description, but I'm a little bit lazier. I'm not a good person. Crimes New Roman. I might forget to put the link in the description below. Fuck me. God damn. If I was such a bad person, just not wanting to put a link. God damn, I'm such a horrible person. I'm probably a cuck too.
And how they turn Joel into a villain, and like making us sympathize with Abby, even though Joel's a perfect special little boy, blah, blah, blah. And if I'm right,
dude, sunk it.
I'm gonna edit something funny in right here.
Never let go of that idea once he had full creative control.
This is pretty standard Spider-Man mistakes. You get used to it. Watch this. He's gonna say,
Joel was killed off forcibly to make us sympathize with Abby, and Neil Druckmann something ideology, whatever. I don't care what he actually says.
Joel, the heart of The Last of Us 1, was brutally killed off in a way to force players to sympathize for his killer, Abby. Joel, the man that we watched lose his daughter, struggle with trauma, bond with Ellie, and save her, needed to become the villain so that he could promote his personal beliefs and ideologies through Abby.
God,
Okay, well, granted, I will say Joel was the villain by the end of Last of Us 1. I mean, for better or worse, I mean, he was just as going against the wishes of Ellie, this little girl, as the doctors he saved her from. He murdered people to stop a murdering of a little girl who was willing to sacrifice herself for the greater good. And granted, if you're a dad, I get it. But still, he was kind of the villain already. He wasn't. I do agree with that aspect. But how are you supposed to empathize with Ellie or Abby after she kills Joel? That was probably the dumbest move they could have done, in my opinion. Like, you would need her. I don't know. I'm not here to rewrite The Last of Us Part 2, but if that was the purpose of her killing Joel, like, I thought the idea was they put Abby at the lowest she could be in terms of sympathy, and then you live in her life and you gain empathy and sympathy for her. That's at least what I thought they were trying to do.
it is so easy. I can read these people like a book, and
Shut up.
I can't even read. So remember that clip of him saying, it's not an attack, it's an opinion. That was in a video he made seemingly as a response to a Reddit thread of some people saying that he is what's wrong with the gaming community because of a previous video he made covering or reviewing Avowed. He never actually shows the thread in question, by the way. I just think that's kind of interesting. You see, he takes issue with this because, according to him, his video about the game was fine.
The even-handed criticism that I had in my Avowed video, where I was relatively soft on them in comparison to just about any other game or any other studio, because there were parts of Avowed that I genuinely liked, and I like Obsidian as a studio. No. I'm the bad guy.
Shall we take a little gander at his even-handed criticism in his video titled, Avowed has to be the biggest cope I've ever seen?
Avowed is one of the biggest copes I have ever seen. I'm struggling to tell the difference between article and advertisement this week. It's like they want to wish success into existence. The industry doesn't want you to expect more. These studios don't want you to expect more. And this studio specifically doesn't expect more from themselves. But before we get into that, a word from today's sponsor. They're trying to manufacture success with articles like Avowed is already a big hit on Steam, celebrating a measly 17,000 concurrent players on Steam, as if that's something to brag about. The art director...
Oh, yeah, I mean, that seems like a strange news article to even run with. Like, why would you be... Like, what does that... deeming it a success or not? You might as well just print, like, timestamp, like, here are the top 50 games being played on Steam and their concurrent player count. Here are the timestamps of, these hotly anticipated games. Like, that probably doesn't deserve an article. You just need to provide enough context around it. Yeah. So I just don't, not even an article worth reading about, except for, I guess, like, the industry potentially pushing for Avowed to do well. And I understand why they would, because Obsidian is beloved and, usually has done great work. My personal opinion on Avowed as an outsider looking in on this one is that it was they didn't set expectations appropriately for it, and they might have gone a little too deep in the tank on their own IP. That's, I guess, more subjective. But sorry. My girlfriend's letting me know all about motorcycles right now, and it's dinging my Apple Watch. But essentially, I think the conversation, for better or for worse, actually, I don't know if Obsidian was putting this out there or somebody else, but what I gathered from it was the conversation unfortunately became this idea that Avowed was going to be a Skyrim level game, and thus its expectations were set against Skyrim. It seemed to me like it was just a really solid down the middle budget, a budget RPG. probably should have been $40. I don't know how much they were charging for it, and and if it was AAA, then I think they bet on the wrong horse. They should have been trying to make that game and that series for less and keep it at a budget title that people rave about, than try to set expectations up at Bethesda levels. So I mean, Obsidian's pretty darn good at being their own worst enemy, though.
Henson took to Blue Sky to rant about Elon Musk and identity politics.
Oh yeah, I forgot about that. That was a big part of it too. And I do think that affected the game's performance. That one of the key people working on the game had to go and get put their opinions out there. Here's the thing: like when you get into these industries, the work has to speak for itself, and you got to sell the car. Those are my 2 cents on it. And call me cynical from here on out whenever I'm talking to you about my wonderful game, X Seekers of Fortune, a strategy card game where 2 players can have the time of their lives, the same kind of action adventure fun you would expect from Magic the Gathering, all in one box that you can purchase and play with your friends. No need for them to bring their own deck. xseekersoffortune.com. But that you don't want to get into you don't get to wade into those waters, or you got to go cautiously wading into those waters, because it can have a big effect on your product if you choose, if you alienate half the people. Remember what Michael Jordan said: Republicans buy sneakers too.
Instead of immersive, distinct character designs, we got the same androgynous, feature-muted male and female characters that, well, we just keep seeing audiences reject. Imagine how different things would have been if Xbox and Obsidian had held their developers accountable, if they had fired Matt Hansen and disavowed his use of the game as a weapon in a culture war. This might sound like it's coming out of left field, but
I think it's coming out of right field, according to Crimes New Roman. It's coming out of right field, sir. Zing.
Game developers need to disconnect from politics. Western studios, man, they just can't get their shit together.
22 seconds. That's the duration of him talking about the things he liked in the game. You probably picked up on this, but the video is basically like 80% him complaining about people actually kind of liking the game, and game developers and their politics, and how the media is trying to trick you into how it's a massive success, blah, blah, Fox News, whatever. Like,
the media is trying to trick you. The media, it's towing its own line, its own narrative right now, especially journalism. And I think that it's definitely causing these conflicts and these and certain things to fail, and some things to maybe get better ratings than they deserve, or make more money than they deserve. Who knows if the street goes both ways on these things. I'm a fence sitter here. I'm just sitting up on the fence, looking down, calling them as I see them. You get to see a lot from up here. You have a lot of perspective. But don't get us wrong here. The media is pushing propaganda for, specific purposes. And, that is, I'm not going to go as far as to say fact, but that is a pretty well understood, true theory.
10% of the video at the end is where he actually kind of talks about the game itself, because it kind of seems like he gets stuck in gamer safe space handjob mode for the vast majority of it at the beginning. And then he kind of remembers to actually talk about the game itself. Oh no, it's
an ad.
It's another clip of his own words being used against him. Oh.
Well, that seems to be all that you got going on here, and you're just going to keep playing clip after clip as though there's some big revelation that we're going to grab here. But you just basically present clips, and then based what he said is so inherently wrong, I should understand why it's wrong. Is that what we're going for here, buddy? Or what exactly? I mean, all you're doing is playing clips where he's being base as fuck.
It's this weird mix of gatekeeping and defensive posturing, as if people aren't allowed to be critical of something without being treated like enemies.
Don't worry, Captain. I got him in my sights. That they, them is going to be were very
okay.
soon.
That was a good one.
I'm just realizing that the name of the movie is The Boss Baby and not The Business Baby. So the joke that I was going to make I can't make anymore. I really should have looked that up before I started
I
recording.
do want to let you know that Crimes New Roman, I do very much sympathize with all these little, hiccups that you have along the way. I get it. I had to change my batteries midway through the recording because you're going on so long. But yeah, I do sympathize. You're making me empathetic towards you. I still think you're kind of a knob, but I mean, you're kind of a knob I could have a beer with, that sort of thing.
The last main crux of his incredibly deep non-political analysis of the situation is how Polygon and games journalism as a whole is failing at running their business.
I mean, the business side of me is genuinely frustrated that these guys are sitting on a gold mine of content and they are wasting it. Skill Up and Gamer Ranks write articles and newsletters and then they turn it into content. Why can't they? They write multiple articles a week, convert them into videos, double dip. Instead, they cry about AI stealing their jobs and sue OpenAI, even though half of their writers are probably using ChatGPT behind the scenes to meet their deadlines by spinning up slightly different. Or probably
IGN and Eurogamer owner Ziff Davis is suing OpenAI for content theft. Doesn't change the idea that the writers themselves could be using ChatGPT. That does not refute his point. It's just an opportunist, and he's the owner of IGN and Eurogamer. Like, this is, if anything, he's your enemy, Crimes New Roman.
GPT behind the scenes to meet their deadlines by spinning up slightly different versions of what everybody else has already written.
Hey, do you want to hear what he says in literally the paragraph before that one?
Polygon has 1.4 million subscribers, and sure, some of their videos actually get some pretty solid views, but they only post once or twice a month, and when they do, it's stuff that people didn't even ask for, like a lore video or a lore breakdown video on how Avowed does lore better than everybody else, a game that's already fading from memory and was widely criticized for being bad at lore.
Even though...
Yet again, here's one big thing that I think you've got to remember when you post the quote across the screen that says what he doesn't care about. But there's this old adage in like filmmaking and creating content for creative artistic expressions. If you would like it, create it for yourself, because to an extent, because if you like it, there'll be people out there who also like it. There'll be people who resonate with it. If you find something in it, there's other people out there like you. Now, depending on how intellectual you are, how deeply you think, how many cultural references you can, absorb and pinpoint on a map, you might have a more limited audience if you try to make something for yourself. It's just the bell curve of IQ, that is, of intelligence. It's like the more dense and sophisticated you make something, probably the more limited your audience is, but you're also going to find possibly a more adamant, fervent, that's not the word I'm looking for here, light, that's off screen, audience in doing that. Anyways, but my point is if he's saying even if he's saying he doesn't want it, that means there's obviously 347K subscribers who also probably don't want it and listen to him and agree and nod and agree with him. So I think I think that part of your criticism is really weak and shallow. So just keep that in mind. At this point, this is a critique. Consider me your professor, and I know you've been doing this longer than me, but I've been around the block. I'm not some spring chicken, and I've seen a lot of of essays out there, and I've seen a lot of ways of trying to take somebody down. A peg. I think you're just trying to take down a peg. You're trying to reframe our perspective on legendary drops. But I'm just letting you know where I think you're failing. Right now, I put this in a C tier. I think if this was, even though I'm making a video of it, I think I might have just abandoned it if it was a full-blown F tier video. Right now, you're sitting at a C. But I would have probably abandoned this if I didn't have a camera pointed at me and a microphone in front of my face, and I was pausing it constantly to criticize you and your work.
You're doing the more interesting deep dive stuff I want. It's not the right kind, so it's bad, actually. Okay, there's a lot that.
And also, his point was that you're Polygon. You're a media outlet. You have writers. You have people who are there who obviously can make videos. You should have been able to turn on the YouTube spigot and figured out how to have in-house editors and constantly pointing cameras at people, you should have been recording people reading their articles, possibly out loud, and having editors adding graphics to them so that you could reach more audience and get YouTube ad revenue. You could have had your staff do let's plays of the games that they're reviewing and have long form content, streams even. What he's saying is that Polygon didn't take advantage of the resources they had in the avenues that they had to go down in order to get more views, get more clicks, get more money and revenue. That's what he's criticizing here. He was criticizing that they weren't inventive, they didn't change with the times, and they thus, like the dinosaurs, went extinct. And that's why the writing staff is now looking for jobs. Don't you get it? You're obviously trying to avoid the points he's trying to make and to communicate, because part of the point is something you disagree with him on. There's an objective truth here, and I will say that. It is objective. Polygon didn't survive because Polygon didn't do what they needed to survive. You got that, Crimes New Roman?
About here, but I'm getting the feeling that some of you are a little awkward with me just having a tube here, so
Why would that be?
I'm gonna make it a little bit more friendly.
Yeah.
A few moments later.
I don't have any paint,
Okay.
so I used nail polish. Shout out OPI. I'm not sponsored by them, but I could be. Problem number one. He gives examples of sites and channels that Polygon could be
What's the tube
following
for
or
anyways?
emulating, and outside of Skill Up, he mentions Insider
Skill Up,
Gaming
okay.
and Game Ranks. The latter of which is literally a slop farm, really loving the depth of content.
Before you buy. Yeah, you can call them a slop farm, but they're making money. This is why I'm no longer a leftist liberal person. This is it. Crimes New Roman, you are deconverting people. You're like the anti-propaganda. You and your ilk. Yeah, you can call it slop, this Before You Buy series, which I've seen a few of these. They're put together. I wouldn't call them slop. They might not be like the best go-to, like, you know, they found a formula. That's what I'm saying. Yeah. Things they had no idea you could do. 25 ups. But they're doing what they need to survive. They're, you know, this is the velocity of content that they have to make in order to stay afloat, in order to make a profit. Yeah, and if you don't like that, then go back to, like, make a capitalism criticism video of like, you know, this is what the free market gets you. You know, you get what you deserve, kind of thing. Yeah, I'm so upset you're giving me the burps.
Content here. As for the former Insider Gaming, I think the reason he likes them is, you know, despite the fact that they are doing the same SEO farming stuff that he criticizes all these other outlets for, on their About page.
Is that what he was criticizing them for? I don't remember you making that point. Did you have a clip that you were going to use so his own words, you know, basically haunted him, or whatever it was you were saying, you know, using his own words to make him look bad? Like, I'm sorry, I think you just did a hat trick right here. And now the ball's under the other, you know, 3-card Monty, and all of a sudden I lost track.
They say that they want to provide insight into the often secretive gaming industry and report on video game news without any bias or politics. It's all about the games and the community, nothing else.
Seems like a solid business plan.
I wonder why he likes them.
Yeah.
And by the way, they absolutely do comment on political things, by the way. Like this article on Trump's tariffs.
Well, I'll see where you're going here. Let's see. But I'm just going to say, this is the sort of political journalism that you should do around video games, because you're telling the people out there who are consuming video game products that if they are planning on doing any sort of upgrades to their systems or rigs, that there is a coming crisis of sorts. Like something we can predict because it was, you know, stated out loud. And so we're telling you, hey, if your head's been in the ground, you might have to pay more or not be able to get video game consoles, computer parts. So get on it. Otherwise, you might miss your opportunity. Do you see that that's a big difference then? This game didn't have women or whatever it is. Like, that is much more subjective versus an objective fact. Objectively, video games are going to cost more because of X, Y, and Z. Subjectively, I felt like Bayonetta was depicted too sexy. I was too bricked up and my girlfriend was too wet. We tried to live in abstinence and we could not. We succumbed to our sensation, desire to come. How dare you? How dare you, video game maker that I know, but it's on the tip of my tongue right now. And Nintendo, how could you? 7.5. Do you see the difference?
Provide absolutely zero analysis other than, I guess. There's tariffs now. What are we gonna do? There's tariffs. What's gonna happen? I don't know. So yeah, it's pretty non-political. Problem numero dos. He mentioned wanting to hear more from articles, like more talk about how the GTA 6 delay might affect stock prices, how earnings forecasts might affect internal decisions, etc., etc.
Barely any variation. Take the Grand Theft Auto 6 delay. It was everywhere, but not a single outlet provided anything beyond the basic announcement. No exploration of Take-Two stock dropping, no discussions about how the pressure to meet earnings forecasts could shape Rockstar's internal decisions or set a precedent across the industry. Just the same surface-level reporting echoed across a dozen sites.
Just a warning, Times New Roman, crimes New Roman, twink death comes for us all. Fortunately, I wasn't a twink. I was more of like, I don't know, a smooth bear. I don't actually know what I am. Maybe a daddy? You tell me, Crimes New Roman. You know better than I do. But just keep dancing. You only got so much more footage to get of yourself looking that good.
I'm sure you're wondering very much how I did, Noah. How are those non-political? Seeing as they are things that are directly tied to the result of the complex political socioeconomic systems that we live in. Allow me to answer that with another example. In a Twitter exchange, I saw him complaining about the new hotness that is $80 game prices. He confidently proclaims that nobody gives a shit about inflation and then promptly complains about the results of inflation.
Yet again, I think what he is stating here is no matter what excuse you give, video games have a locked-in value in people's minds of like what they'd be willing to spend on it. And he's talking, I think, mostly to the psychological, would you say brick wall or cliff side that they're about to drive off with the $80 price tag. I earnestly believe that there are maybe 5 games that are worth $80, and 4 of them are probably Nintendo games. Let's see, a new Mario game, 3D, a new Super Smash Brothers game, a new Mario Kart game. Sorry, that one it could like legitimately cost $80. Maybe the new like football sports, those sports games. I don't know. That's going to be a tough sell. I think they need to last longer than a year if they're going to go up to 80. Those things should be like 40. Considering that they're annual purchases. And then obviously GTA 6. GTA 6 could be $120 for all I care. That like I don't even like the GTA series, and I know that game is worth, like I said, $120 probably. I would say they could easily sell it for, and I think it would be buyable at that price and worth it because let's face it, Super Smash Brothers, Mario Kart, and Grand Theft Auto, those are games that back in the disc days, you could just leave me your console because you would just know, like, I'm coming home, I'm playing Melee. I'm playing Melee until I go to bed. I'm waking up, I'm getting a little bit in before school, and I'm going to school. And then same for the working class guy and gals out there. I want to play some GTA. I want to play through the story. When we get to the end of the story, then I'm going to start playing online all the time. I'm going to do all the missions. It's the first game they boot up. It's the last game they put down. It's going to be the last game that they turn on the console to play. Those games, $80 and above, yeah. But fucking what? Assassin's Creed? You're telling me that you're going to charge $80 for those games? Me, oh, Elden Ring. Yeah, the whatever Soulsborne comes out next also could probably be sold for 80, and it doesn't need to be. Honestly, guys, AA games, indie games, that's where it's at. Get off the AAA. Stop chasing these AAAs. They're dog shit. If a game costs more than $100,000 and it's not named GTA, probably not worth it. Well, yeah, because I don't even think the Yakuza games cost that much. Anyways, let's go.
Inflation. Someone even points out to him that he could be using this as a teaching moment to show people the complex system.
Dude, you should use this as a teaching moment to show gamers how the world actually works while they're jacking off and playing gotcha. Shit changes. Your government slowly creates systems to take advantage of you and your earnings, and sometimes companies have to make moves to stay competitive. You are off base. I mean, I do agree that this could be a teaching moment, but I don't think he's off base. I think all the other game companies that are not named Nintendo that are going to start selling games for $80 and promptly failing are off base, but that's me.
That we live under and how stuff like inflation actually works. But instead, he doubles down and mocks that person.
Please, vehemently non-political YouTuber, please be political. Yeah, I'm good.
Saying, please, vehemently non-political YouTuber, please be political. Yeah, I'm good. This isn't just being unaware of how the world works, but an absolutely staggering admission that maintaining your own ideological safe space is kind of more important than engaging with basic economics. He can make these distinctions because one is perceived as the status quo and one is perceived as not. I'm gonna talk about this later.
We need full context. That's in part 3, I promise. Well, okay, you're promising. Let's see. What were the other 2 things? It says on the screen, stocks are as natural as air.
Status quo and one
inflation, political becomes money just be existing. Inflation, political, because money just be existing. I really don't understand what you're getting at here. Stocks aren't as natural as air, but they are probably as they're probably closer to being as natural as a tree.
It is not. I'm gonna talk about this later. Just hold on. There's a lot to get through. Thing number 3. This is also why his solutions seem to revolve around turning Polygon into basically a content farm, but a different kind than the one he says he doesn't actually like. Because again, he sees
content farm good ? Unless I don't like Mangry Face
as the status quo for success and what people want, instead of being able to maintain and entertain the idea that people who have, more fully developed frontal lobes could want content with more nuance and depth, and not just be mindless self-affirmations or top 10 slop videos. People like me, I am those people. I want games and the content around them to be treated seriously as art and an art form, as a force in society, which is why critiquing them and how they are affected by complex socioeconomic conditions is objectively correct. I also want content that takes longer to produce, because that's the only way that kind of content can be made.
Are you going to talk about any of his long form journalistic videos he's been putting out recently, now that he actually has an audience and can do it? I mean, I forgot what it was about. It had something to do with the state of games with microtransactions. I really should pull it up here, but basically he's doing that. I mean, yeah, some of his videos are these, I will admit, some of them are a little bit more, they at a certain point can write themselves, because he has his beat and he knows his talking points, and he can basically kind of map out based on things he's already put in videos and sort of create a script. I mean, if you want to call that low effort, I mean, he still has to turn on the recorder and record himself reading the script. I'm horrible at that, by the way. That's why I do this kind of content. But he's doing, I feel like he's on his way to filling in one of those gaps, to be another skill up. He's on his way, and he's doing a damn good job of it too, in my opinion. All right.
Why I put out one video a month instead of pumping something out every 3 days, because that is what I want to do. No, I'm not saying that frequency of content is indicative of quality. I'm saying people can have different
I mean, you put a month into these. I mean, I can tell. It looks like you have fun doing it too.
desires for what they want to do. Pay attention. It's also why he doesn't really seem to understand that running something like a gamer semen farm is significantly different and easier to do than running a full-fledged publication. Both things are gaming. Why not both successful? Gay people.
Activist, adjacent, socially progressive.
It's very much giving the same energy as people who say,
there's just all gay people that don't. Not gonna, you know, I mean, it's not that, it's just that there are a lot of people out there are locked in on, like, you know, into believing the news, the narrative that's been force fed to them, you know, that essentially has them to the point of they're either, you know, they're basically they're on one of two extreme sides of stupidity. The two people on the two sides of the fence, in my opinion, the fence-sitters, you know, the mad libs, you know, the cry bullies, if you will. Sometimes some of them are, and then the you know, the Fox News, what's the song called, the hogs. I mean, those are the most, like, room temperature IQ takes and places to be in the cultural conversation, you know, and I think that a lot of people are there. There's a lot of room temperature IQ heterosexuals and homosexuals. There's a lot of room temperature IQ white people and black people and Hispanic people. A lot of people are there, and they just tune in and get told what to believe, and then you know, rage against the machine one way or the other, you know, and but all they do is keep it spinning and keep it going with all their hate mongering and all that jazz. All right, so there's poetry in there somewhere.
That they like that Trump is a businessman and wants him to run the country like a business, despite having effectively no idea what that means at all. Also, he's bad at business. Also, this might be a little petty, but if he had gone to Polygon's website one single fucking time, just visited their homepage one single time throughout the entirety of the 2 hours he spent making this video, he would know that they have newsletters because it's at the top of the fucking page. Oh, but considering he just casually off the cuff admits this in the middle of the video, I really can't say I'm surprised.
I'll be honest, I had no idea the Polygon was this bad. I had no clue. I haven't really read them in a long time. I usually stick to Insider Gaming because they stick to the news and they have some pretty good writers.
I wish this tube had arms so it could hug me back.
Oh, good. Finally, we're getting to it.
This could be us.
No.
But you're not subscribed, so you're playing. I think the most dangerous part about what he's doing is how he's saying he's just talking shit and making videos for fun. Yet
okay, let's see. Let me read Legendary Drop's words based on his tweet here. I'm not used to all the support for my content. I'm still just a dude making videos and talking shit for fun. I forget that there are people who will try to bait me just to get the engagement for themselves. Sometimes I need help, falling for it. Thanks, guys.
Video game journalism.
I mean, I don't think that there's anything wrong with what he's saying here yet again. I think it's as though this guy just delivered a lot of evidence for Legendary Drops being a person with opinions and thus bad. We'll continue on.
As people who do literal state propaganda working to protect the pure white Christian soul of the nation. These two things.
What? Okay. Did I pause at like the absolute worst right time? What the fuck did you just say?
But you're not subscribed, so you're playing. I think the most dangerous part about what he's doing is how he's saying he's just talking shit and making videos for fun. Yet coming off in his videos speaking with the same intensity about video game journalism as people who do literal state propaganda working to protect the pure white Christian soul of the nation. These
What the actual fuck? Yeah, that grade is going down. What are you talking about there? Oh, I think he talks like a Nazi. And do I need to bleep that out? I need to say that as bad as possible. What do other people say? He's talking as bad as what you just. I mean, he should almost nearly sue you for defamation. That's how bad that you really wrote that statement in order to hold up in court, I'm sure, because that was atrocious. Crimes New Roman, that was a thought crime. And I mean that in the way that it should be expressed, which is you basically did one of those things on the list of smart things. I'm not going to pull it up. I'm really trying to get a video out, to keep myself in the habit. I know it's not ad hominem, but it's like on that list. You just tried to backdoor your way into calling legendary drops an N-word, and not that N-word. The one with the hard Z is the one I'm talking about. That's all, yeah, dropping hard Z's on a guy, and we're not talking about trying to get him to sleep. Honestly, I think you owe him an apology for that one. I mean, unless you want to get further along and you have some mountain of evidence, that was uncalled for.
two things feel at odds with each other. But let's say, for the sake of
argument...
argument...
Why did those two things right there feel at odds to you? A blonde Christian woman and a black family? But those two images weren't in odds. There were different things about the pictures. There was, maybe some contrast to be drawn from them. What are you trying to say here?
It's saying hypocritical, provably untrue, borderline conspiratorial, hateful shit is actually a fun activity for him.
Yeah. Aren't we having a good time here, buddy? I mean, I am.
Class, why would this be? He is the normal, the pure, the good specialist little boy speaking truth and justice into the world against the evil progressive activism or whatever. Believing somebody having an opinion that Bayonetta is a little sexist is the equivalent of Rosa Parks.
I think that was a little sexy. She was a little too sexy for that journalist.
Like thrown off the bus. He's Rosa Parks in the situation, by the way. The other option in...
What are you... I thought you said you were getting serious here, bro. What is going on? You are just loading him up like with accusations out of nowhere, like mountains of evidence. I don't think he ever claimed to be this special little boy. He never claimed that this was some sort of like, civil rights movement kind of hill to die on. It's just his hill to die on. Maybe, this is wild. You are steadily losing ground here. Like, you could have edited this part out. Unless you're going somewhere with this, you could have edited this part out, saved us both about 10, 20 minutes. Jesus Christ, another 20 minutes of this. Holy shit. Saved us both 20 minutes and had at least a leg to stand on. You're losing all credibility here.
This scenario is, of course, that he is just actively lying to himself. Because he is so detached and unaffected by, literally anything he talks about. He is completely unaware.
How is he not affected by what he's talking about? He's becoming a game journalist. He's like every step, every subscriber he gets, everything he talks about is a much more in his, he's being affected by it. I'm trying to get my words here. Basically, this is becoming his bread and butter.
Of the harmful propaganda he is spreading around, again, anybody not a mediocre, straight, white, cis-able...
Favorite word, mediocre white man. There's plenty of us. You an example.
Bodied man. I kind of think that like this one is kind of worse because if you trick your little brain into thinking that your actions and words are not actually serious that can make you desensitized over time to committing more and more intensely hateful and harmful acts.
I'm not sure how hard it is in Adobe. Or not. You're probably using Final Cut Pro just like me. You're an Apple boy through and through, I bet, with those tats, or some sort of like cyber hacker, PC Linux person. I really feel like you should put some sort of shadow behind yourself. I can tell you're shooting yourself against a green screen and then putting yourself on one of your more natural locations in your house. That's the vibe I'm getting from this. You need to have some sort of separation. You need a highlight around your shoulders, maybe shine a light from above and hitting you from behind. I think that would help a bit. It would also be more natural because the lights that you have behind you, this is where I'm at with the video. I'm criticizing your technique, and I obviously am one to talk. This is basically being held together with bubblegum. But, if I don't feel like I can help your content, the words coming out of your mouth, those are going to be shit for the rest of your life. I might be able to help your aesthetic. I like your aesthetic. I like the cat posters. I like that single rose. I don't know what the tube is about. If you had a plan with that, you didn't really nail it. It just seems like odd for odd's sakes. And careful those Capri Suns.
I don't want to say that this is, all the ways true, but look at where he is now compared to where he was over a year ago. Like the difference.
Diablo 4 raids, the massive, last epoch of the best Diablo 4 alternative. I have concerns about Chrono. I mean, he got better at making thumbnails? What's your point here, counselor? The mess
is
all classes not in Diablo 4. It seems like he was finding himself like, eventually I'm going to be doing, or more of my content is going to be original, like, scripted content like yours, Crimes New Roman, than it will be reaction content. I'm making reaction content right now to get my feet wet and to start building, getting in the habit of making videos, learning how to edit, things like that. I mean, we all start somewhere. What's your point?
Creating a false distance like this is so...
What do you mean false distance? What is up with the videos?
I don't want to say that this is, all the ways true, but look at where he is now compared to where he was over a year ago. Like the difference is night and day. Creating a false distance like this is so unbelievably dangerous and also like kind of cowardly. And to frame this properly, Slavoj Žižek sums it up, I think, quite nice.
You get points back. You get bonus points if you do the accent, if you do the voice. Is he going to do the voice, folks? Let's see.
Trigger warning for intense sniffling and large amounts of mouth noises.
The way ideology works
Coward.
today and already in the Nazi time is that the most dangerous false distance is when you tell yourself, oh, but I'm not taking it seriously. No, it is serious and you are not aware how serious it is. Or Freud has a very nice formula for this when he says we are not only more immoral than we think, our id is also more moral than we think.
The id,
the most intelligent words spoken this entire video. And I'll include legendary drops in that. I like legendary drops a lot, but that man is a legitimate philosopher of our times. One of the greats. Id, ego, superego, basic instincts. So the id is basic instincts. The ego is reality. And the superego is our morals and virtue. Keep that in mind.
is your base instincts and pure desires, and to assume that they are completely neutral and not influenced by the world around you that you live in can lead you to mindlessly follow base assumptions that you might not even know are weird and gross and harmful on the simple point that they make your fifis feel good.
I think that you were speaking about yourself, Crimes. Just saying. I mean, that street goes both ways. If he's doing it, so are you. I think you're just having one of those times where you're seeing somebody else who's just like you, but in a different way, and you're kind of breaking yourself down because of it.
Drops appears to suffer from this problem deeply. I mean, the dude sounds like he's talking about the cosmic battle for good and evil because somebody made an article talking about how fascism is bad.
You alienated your audience. You scared developers into silence. You turned your platform into a weapon. Then you pointed it at the very industry that once embraced you.
Politics to him means things that go against his base instincts and view of reality, to which he is entirely uncritical of, even economically. This is how I rationalize him not wanting to engage with inflation in that weird Twitter exchange, yet also saying in his video how he wanted game journalists to talk about GTA 6 stock prices. Inflation is a political systemic tool interfering with the universal value of the dollar, so that's bad, but the stock market is a simply neutral core part of perpetual economic reality. So that is good and fine and normal. Look, I know it doesn't actually make any form of sense, but to me, this is the only way that I can rationalize this genuinely gold medal Olympic mental gymnastics routine that I'm witnessing. Coincidentally, this just happens to be the mentality with which the capitalist system we live under thrives. We assume that things like stocks and whatever are normal, amoral, purely neutral in their function, and just how things are, which leads to a whole lot of not great things happening. To quote Mark Fisher on this, the role of capitalist ideology is not to make an explicit case for something in the way that propaganda does, but to conceal the fact that the operations of capital do not depend on any sort of subjectively assumed belief. Shout out Mark Fisher, read more of him in my book club. Please check it out, I'm so lonely. It's reasons like this which is why, instead of wanting to seriously examine the economic and social complexities of the industry or what is going on not just with the downturn of games journalism, but journalism as a whole, or seriously contemplate the implementation of diversity and DEI.
Confronting the limits of gay hate crimes, activism, radical critique. Okay.
Real systemic lenses, he just takes the easy non-systemic answer and points at the first thing that he sees and goes, that must have been it. It must have made sense. Oh, it all makes sense. He never talks about anti-union efforts, disrupting game devs and journalisms and the complexity of running a publishing outfit, only how they wrote bad articles and alienated shitty gamers who would never read it in the first place. He's obvious.
I mean, if the gamers aren't reading the articles, who is? Do you have any, just curious, do you have any stats? Is there any like traffic reports about Polygon that showed that it was a thriving company and that their articles were being well received and well read? That it's like a place will shut down if it's not, if it's not being utilized. Like, was it on life support? And I'm just saying it's like, it's what is it? The Occam's razor? The simplest exclamation is usually the right one. I mean, at the very least, he's pointing to the symptom he's most interested in. You could say like, I don't know, is that distracting from the other problems? I don't know, man. You've talked so much, you've exhausted me. Wait, 7 trailblazing LGBT plus pioneers who helped shape the video games as we know it. It could be a good article, 2021. I'd be like interested to know behind the scenes who, was on, who made the list. I mean, I'm pretty sure the guy who made Fallout, well, he's a gay man, right? Pretty cool. Great game series. Obsidian, their best games, probably Fallout New Vegas and the Outer Worlds. So I'm pretty sure he was the head on both of those. But hey, he also has criticisms about how the games industry has changed that he's posted in his own video about how much harder it is to work in these systems of bureaucracy and redundancy, where he is, even as a programmer himself, is basically not allowed to make his own games. And he has to run it through people who take time and, you know, and doing things that he knows he can do in less time. I mean, that is usually really the criticism that people have, like people like Asmongold and people like Legendary Drops. What they're criticizing is this bloated, you know, this artistic pursuit that has become bloated with these, I don't know what to call them. It's not, you know, non-mission critical roadblocks within their own corporation.
Going to talk about the many influential LGBT people who shape and continue to shape video games as we know it, or the thousands of real human non-corporation people who want more and better diversity in everything, only how it's just a corporate tax break now. Yes, this is like kind of a major point in his DEI video that these days that's why companies mainly include it, is for tax breaks.
Governments offer tax breaks, grants, and other financial incentives to companies that follow CSR guidelines, and over time, companies simply just comply to maximize their revenue and avoid fines and potential lawsuits. So instead of implementing DEI initiatives out of a genuine desire for inclusivity, many companies are simply doing it just to get those benefits.
He so conveniently ignores the many people who want to do it for very good, nice, natural reasons. And also, something nobody ever seems to mention is that there are tax breaks for literally fucking everything. But these goons only seem to have a problem with the ones that seem to tangentially involve diversity. Suspicious? Diversity has to be done the right way, knowing full well he's talking about how video game characters look, and not something like the complexities of mainstreaming, for example.
All right, I'm going to read it. Thus, our starting point for critique of hate crimes legislation as an emancipatory strategy is that hate crime legislation is part of and reflects the weaknesses of the overall assimilationist, inclusion-focused mainstream gay agenda. Just as the fight for military inclusion disappears international solidarities and anti-imperialism, and just as the struggle for marriage rights disappears the work of feminism and struggles for economic justice, hate crime activism disappears the interest of poor and non-white communities. What? Confronting the limits of gay hate crime activism, a radical critique by James Spade and Craig Wizzle? I might be too stupid to understand what that is within the context of what we're talking about here. Thus, our starting point for critique of hate crime legislation as an emancipatory strategy is that hate crime legislation is part of and reflects the weakness of the overall assimilationists' inclusion-focused mainstream gay agenda. Is this pro or anti the, are they just trying to say that gay hate crime legislation disappears? Sorry, I'm going to have to move on. I do apologize. I'm not smart. If you understand what this is trying to say, but I feel like the Crimes New Roman should probably have laid out the path of why he's putting such a dense sentence on the screen. I don't even have context to understand like where it's coming from. My best guess is that this is saying this is like some more radical, more intellectual version of racism or whatever he wants to call it, you know, of anti diversity, and this is their like way of saying that, you know, hate crime stuff doesn't work because it'll just garner more hate crime, calls for stricter hate crime laws. It won't actually stop hate crimes. It'll just cause there to be more hate crimes, or at the very least more crimes classified as hate crimes. That's my best guess.
Or how hate speech laws are not actually that great, and if anything, detrimental to broader minority communities as a whole. No, 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 no. He would much rather just say political ideology or activism. Activism?
Yet again, I can relate, brother.
Fucking time. Actually, though, if you want to know more about the mainstreaming hate speech law stuff, I'm going to link a good speech by a really cool lawyer who is getting a Kessler Award. It's a good speech. Go watch it. Throughout all of this, I can't help but think that these are not the videos, the words, or the praxis of somebody who actually wants video games and journalistic success to be for everybody. And his brain is so...
I don't think he's claiming, I could be wrong. I think he's claiming that he wants video game journalism to be better and he can make it better. But he didn't say anything about it being for everyone. When did he say that? It's for people, maybe his people. I mean, and I'm pretty sure there's going to be plenty. I would say that's probably going to be mostly dudes. I'll admit that. It's YouTube, brother. We're here. If we're here on YouTube, we're catering to men. That said, I'm going to take a bet and say he probably has a higher percentage of his user base being black or Hispanic, maybe even Middle Eastern, maybe even French. No, he might not beat you there. But I'm going to say, even if you break it down by proportion, my bet, I would put money on it, that he has more watchers of ethnic diversity. I'm not going to say women, not going to say LGBTQ, but dudes of all races. I bet you he got you beat there.
On it by this fiction of a purist gamer, the ideal audience of those worthy, that even basic accessibility options in video games send him into a bit of a tizzy. I found this exceptionally
all
surreal.
Right. Legendary Drops tweets. I'll read the tweet out loud. I think we need to have a long, hard talk. And it's in reference to Icy Veins. Blizzard is adding a single button assistant in patch 11.1.7 that casts your entire rotation at a small GDC cost. Thoughts? Obviously, I'm not a World of Warcraft person, but what I assume this is saying is like, why, you're taking the gameplay out of the game, and thus it's no longer a game. And I definitely agree with this. And I will say, and I think there's a lot of good accessibility options, specifically around color blindness and ability to see. But at a certain point, games not every game is for every person. My brain doesn't work fast enough for fighting games, I think. Maybe it works faster these days. I would get trashed. I've literally sat down at a table and played a game. And granted, it was a play test of a guy's game that he was designing, a game that like European, what was it, the 30 Years War. It was a game that simulated the 30 Years War, and I honestly had no idea what I was doing, what anything really meant. Like 2 turns into the game, I was like, I could be winning or losing, definitely not winning. That's all I knew. That sometimes games are beyond your grasp and your scope. So I'm just going to say that not every game should be built for every person, and that's just the sad reality of life. Now, I don't know if there was a particularly great strategy. I World of Warcraft, I'd have to learn more about it to know how much this like takes away from being good. I would just need to know more, but for the most part, I definitely have an issue with taking gameplay out of games in the name of accessibility. I'll say that. I know where I stand on that line.
He made, in which he's mad about Blizzard introducing a rotation assistant native to WoW that allows people with physical impairments to more easily make complex button presses in the game, infamously that has a lot of complex button presses. When somebody tries to correct him and say that actually this is good and normal by pointing...
Carl, it's not as bad as it looks. It helps those who may need it and won't be viable for harder content. Legendary drops. I think that misses the point entirely. If your game is so poorly designed, you need to make it where you only click one button to play. That's not an accessibility issue. That's our game is fucked issue. Hey, that's a pretty good point. Let's see if he has better points. Because I mean, even like, I honestly think that, you know, there was a time and place for World of Warcraft. If you're still playing it in this day and age, you have problems. Carl, sure, you can look at it like that, but if you're going to do harder content, the one button assist or the macros add-ons will not be viable, especially with that 2 delay on a GCD legendary. So he's not arguing the point that Legendary Drops is making here. And Legendary Drops says, I genuinely can't get behind this reasoning. It's like painting over mold instead of fixing the leak. It hides the problem, but the rot keeps spreading. The problem is, I think, something like World of Warcraft, this is probably so deep in their engine that they are never going to be able to fix it. They can't get to it any longer. My assumption, like with how long that game's been going, all they can do is try to, you know, put in little patches on top of everything. But I do agree with you, Legendary Drops. They messed up building their engine in the first place. That's what the problem is. At least, you know, or the engine has been going so long. Like, cars eventually break down. So do games. Leave. Go do something else. Get out of World of Warcraft. So I don't have a problem with what he's saying here. Yet again, big surprise.
You know, exactly what I just said. He doubles down with zero explanation as to why, and just says really
zero explanation as to why. It's right there. That's not an accessibility issue. That's our game is fucked issue. Right there on the screen. I can point at it like there, up there. I think that's where it's going to be in general. Is my hand going out of screen, out of frame? I don't know. Okay. You are really bad at this, Crimes New Roman. Your grade is now, like, I am willing to say that this essay is an F tier essay. I'm going to finish it because I'm only 12 and a half minutes away from finishing it. I'm presuming you have a lot of, I assume you have a lot of patrons. Why else are you doing this? You're going to have a big, long patron roll at the end of this, right?
Big weird things like game is fucked and the rot is spreading. See, again, I don't know if he doesn't know or literally just doesn't care that macros and add-ons that do this exact thing have been around for literally forever, and Blizzard just
not the
making
point,
this
not
easier
the point,
to do by
not the
natively
point,
putting
not
it
the
into
point,
the
not
game
the point,
is
not the point,
good,
not
but his
the
complete
point,
inability
not the point.
to just say, oh hey, it's pretty cool that people who might be less able-bodied than myself can enjoy this game with less friction now, while not removing the challenge of the highest level content that this sort of edition cannot compensate for. The fact that he can't fucking say that and just gets mad about it shows how entitled and broken his perspective is on not just who gaming should be for, but kind of the broader human experience in general. Don't worry though, he's not political anyway, if I may.
At this point, I don't care, man. He can be political. I'm fine with it. That, you know, if this is what political is, fine.
Mr. Drops, if you're watching this, allow me to speak to you directly
this should
for
be
a
good.
moment. Mano y mano. Mano y mano. If you're watching this, hi. I have one more clip that I would like to play specifically just for you.
Instead of actually addressing any of my arguments, they go straight to political strawmen, painting me as a grifter, right-wing agitator, or anti-woke, just so they can comfortably dismiss my opinion without actually having to engage with it.
Again, I don't know the contents of this thread because you never actually show proof of it existing, but I think I've done a pretty decent job of addressing your opinions and showing that you kind of come off as a little bit of an entitled, ignorant person who's just trying to dilute their broadly insensitive opinions with fake sincerity.
I would beg to differ. I do not believe you illustrated that. I think that all you did was bring up clips that you think were somehow inherently wrong and then did nothing to really explain or elaborate on your point, or did very little, and often made points that didn't really go anywhere. And I also think you called him a hard Z without any real evidence to back that up. You just put it out there like a shit on the table, a shit on the floor. That's what I believe.
Maybe I'm just a little snowflake.
Yes, you are. 100%. You are a snowflake and you're about to melt.
Come off as like really mean-spirited. Like, to me, it feels like you're not even trying to speak in a way to these game journalists, to these game developers, in a way that like you actually want to connect with them. It feels like you're so focused on riling up the drooling masses who are desperate to get their daily hand job. Like, I
can't take you seriously. You're not a serious person. And I know that you're probably thinking, well, good, because I'm a fun person. No, serious people are fun.
I'm sorry. I know you say that you don't get why people would call you a grifter, a right-wing agitator, and so on and so on. Yet do you stop for but a moment to think that the rhetoric
okay, yet again, gotta pause. Based off Operations 2 says 1% equals 1% top surgery scars. Love that. 99%. This isn't for me. Game industry. The 99% don't count. Wait, who is this? Legendary Drops? It's very easy to find bigoted stuff like this in your comments because you make it an environment for it. Yep, that classic. Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if it's pretty easy to find most things in most comment sections. This is the internet. I want to see what's in your comment section. Maybe we'll take a quick peruse. I doubt it's going to be worth it. And also, this video is already very long. But bro, what is this? Guilt by association? It wasn't written by Legendary Drops. It doesn't even look like he upvoted it. Also, I don't disagree. I don't think this is the wildest, worst take in the world. You could say it so much more heinously. You could say well, that'd be so clipped. You could incite violence or suggest violence against trans people in your comment. I'm sure that it would get deleted. Maybe you can't. There's a lot of moderation on YouTube, but you could say worse. All this is saying is that this person believes that those little indicators, the signifiers of like trans acceptance, are either like going over and not appealing to a large portion of the population. I don't think it's 99-1, but it's probably like 90. How should I say this? I'll give you like 73 to 75%. Just probably let it roll off their back and don't hate it, but at the same time, it doesn't drive them to play the game, so they probably just ignore the game. Seeing that sort of thing, they're just like, oh, okay, And then like another, what did I say, 75, and then like another 90, not 90. Maybe another, like somewhere between 18 and 22% are adamantly against it. And then you have like whatever remainder that is, like between like less than 10% are actively like chanting, yay, about it. There's a lot of people who don't care, but not caring just makes them indifferent. And then they don't buy the game as well. The personal opinion there.
And the cultural arguments that you make are just kind of a fancier, dressed up version of those guys' words and language.
So PlayStation released a trailer for this new Naughty Dog game. It wasn't a sequel to Uncharted. It wasn't.
Speaking of which, folks, quick reminder: made an entire video, kind of quasi-scripted video about this trailer. And where I tell you, it's not just her looks. It's, it's way more than that made it a bad trailer. You should go watch it. Neil Druckmann, not a great director.
Last of Us. It was instead a mannish lesbian girl boss game. And gamers have been rightly upset with 98,000 upvotes to 261,000 downvotes.
This is an 80s theme sci-fi action game that is set in space. Your audience is predominantly male. A masculine, rough around the edges bald woman is going to be an incredibly difficult sell, especially when players have become hyper aware to social and political messaging in video games and how often it's forced into the medium.
Seriously, dude, if I can play something you said with Andy Pants Gaming, the Captain Planet of bigotry, and have those arguments be exactly the same, just phrased differently, that's not a good look.
I don't really have anything else to say to that, but that's not how this works, because you could have been playing Andy Pants Gaming's least controversial take, and you could have been playing Legendary Drop's most controversial take, which I don't think is that much of a controversial take, and then you just made a false equivalency, didn't you? Is that, I mean, I need to, next time I watch one of your videos, Crimes, I'll have on a side screen, or I'll write down all those argument fallacies so I can cite them properly. But I'm pretty sure that I'm just scratching the surface on this one.
Record, though, I do think you have a genuine desire to want things to be better, as I do, as we all do. But your level of commitment to this non-political centrist mindset borders on parody and makes you look deeply uncurious and dismissive to real problems people are going through to anybody outside of your equally uncurious audience. I'm not saying that there aren't problems in any of the things you talk about. There are absolutely so many problems in game development, in journalism as a whole, even in online discords, like dorks on subreddits who attach their personality to a whole ass game and just ignore any form of actual criticism. It's super cringe and weird. What I am saying is that your diagnoses for all of these problems seems to fall in line with the same vaguely right-wing adjacent talking points, even if you don't mean it that way. And it's,
I mean, not, you just said right-wing talking points as though it's inherently a bad thing. So, not saying that the talking points are good ones, but, and I've definitely had my issues with right-wing talking points, but how are we ever supposed to develop any sort of civil conversation if right-wing equals instantly wrong? Like, you realize over half the population is probably going to be baseline conservative. All you can do is pull them a little bit closer to you, but ironically, the closer you pull them to, the further away you get from them. It's almost like a magnetic thing. They're never going to cross a threshold of being an acceptable conservative, unless I'm wrong. Tell me, what is an acceptable conservative? But you're going to have to make room for an acceptable conservative, just like a conservative needs to make room for an acceptable leftist, or have that middle ground that they come to. Like, this kind of conversation is not meant, what you're talking about in this video is not meant to convince anybody on the right to be more on your side. It's just to gas up the people on your side. This is just what we do when we get together and talk about all the when coworkers get together and chit chat about all the things they hate about what management's doing. It's they're not doing it to change anything most of the time. They're just doing it to gas each other up and let off steam.
probably why people might think you're grifting for the chuds in the first place. Just saying. As I said at the end of my Jack Sather video, and I think the science fiction one, I don't remember at this point, honestly, but I am always down to talk. I am not a coward. Everything I said here, I would openly say to your face, but I would much rather have a more productive discussion and actually build bridges and talk to people and come to mutual understandings and learn and grow, instead of just having another culture war behind screens. Again, we need a culture war. We need a class war, baby. Sometimes
good luck
we do
with that.
gotta have a little bit of slapping each other behind screens, though, just as a treat. I am not trying to do this to start shit. I'm trying to do this to better a space that I love engaging with and I have problems with as a queer person who is just trying to exist, yet bombarded.
Yeah,
by
keep crying, fucking Wokey. You guys' time is over by Hey 1829 4 days ago. 4 upvotes on this website on YouTube. Yet again, I don't see Legendary Drop's name there. Don't see his avatar. How is this relevant in a video about Legendary Drops?
and bigotry and a whole bunch of uninformed
Pansy, weak, and gay. Cry more. Says the person with the "I'm in love with my sadness" in their bio. Pick a lane, dog. Okay, that's actually pretty good. I mean, kids, these guys suck. Don't get me wrong. I am not defending the people who are like laying out harassments or at least making fun of Crimes New Roman here. They could be doing a much better job of it. I hope I've illustrated that in this video. Up your game if you're going to be coming after people who have bad opinions. Don't go for the basic stuff. They've heard it a million times. They want you to go for that stuff. Attack them where it matters. Their integrity.
nonsense that people like you spew, which actively
We should have gate kept gaming more if you are the type of people we have to deal with now.
make things more hostile.
Nobody buy the Dragon Age, the gay guard. And if you don't get why, then please continue being a useful idiot. At least China did find a loophole in this fake culture war. And boy, oh boy, do they run most of the U.S. market. Yeah, no, that's not I'm not agreeing with don't buy Dragon Age the Veilguard because it's gay and it has gay characters in it. That's not the thing. What I'm saying is that China, I don't think it was a loophole. I think they found an opening in the U.S. market. That is to say that they the culture wars going on. U.S. companies basically nerfed their own games with bad design and prioritizing non-design features and hiring staff that weren't there to make good games, but were there to make, games in their image. And then China's just sitting back and being like, well, we can make good games. And they did.
For people like me who just want to talk about video games. Do I really make videos like this? I'd much rather contribute to the space in
My
more
favorite open
meaningful,
world game.
introspective,
This is bad.
positive
Asmongold is
ways
modern
than just
hates
making
epidemic, explore
low-effort
gaming,
drama slop
beauty
all
standards.
the time. Learning about the world can be as fun as it is scary, but it's more fun with people. We love community here. Join my Patreon. Join my book club. You don't even need to join my Patreon. I will send you PDFs of the books we're reading and include you in the discussions. And we can talk all you want. It'll be a great time. We can paint our nails. We can talk about boys. It'll be great. I love using books and lectures to learn and enrich myself with all that stuff and to make me a better writer and a better commentator. And as somebody who does the same video type stuff that I do, I would hope that you would as well. I hope on some level, if you're watching this, if you made it this far, I'm kind of getting through to you. I know I use some spicy language in there, but let's be honest, you do the same thing, so you should be able to take it if you can dish it out. And one
maybe I use some, I don't know how spicy my language is. I definitely said F words at certain points, but I didn't go and I didn't call your viewpoint or anything that involved a sexual act. I just want to point that out. You just called them all like circle jerking dudes, throughout the entire video and made that your recurring joke for them. So I don't know if I accept that accusation.
once again, for the last time, to use your own words here.
So hopefully some writers found a gleam of solid information in here, or a little bit of advice that they might take into their writing, or maybe they take into their YouTube career, or whatever it might be. Who knows?
I'm sorry, I had to do it. Had to do it. It's too easy, had to do it. And for my beautiful viewers, new
That sword cut both ways.
old, especially the subscribers, as we have traveled on this odyssey of As we have traveled on this odyssey of critical thinking together, I want you to see that I value self-reflection and critical examination and complex engagement.
No, you don't. You value logical fallacies and, you know, creating straw man arguments and guilt by association. Now, I remember those pretty strongly. You didn't really follow through on many of the points that you tried to make. I mean, if this video was to be honestly thorough in all the things that you brought up, it'd probably have to be another 30 minutes. Thank God it's not. But probably would have been a better video, ironically. Could have probably cut out some of that, you know, just personality stuff. Though that was the best parts. You know, I don't know. Maybe you edged out to a D-. Nah, you dropped the hard Z on him. No reason for that. F.
Are completely allowed to level meaningful critiques on anything, including the gaming industry. But Mr. Drops has not really been doing that. And if you are a watcher of his, watching my video, first of all, please don't leave a mean comment. I would really hate that if you did that. But also, I hope I've made at least a little bit of sense in critiquing how he talks and made you a little bit more skeptical and just kind of going along with everything that he says. I do not care if you believe everything I say. I do not care if you have the same political alignments as I do. I just want you to see that what you are doing to yourself, to everybody you interact with directly or indirectly, and even the things that you advocate for, you could be doing a disservice if you choose to live your life in a non-reflective manner. Because remember, if your head is all the way up your ass, no light can get in there. Self-reflection is always the most important thing to do to make sure that we're actually doing things that benefit the most amount of people and not just your selfish ass. And Dean Spade, the cool lawyer person I talked to before, said it the best.
In what way do I contribute to the subjugation of any part of those who I call my people? It's from Audre Lorde's 1982 speech. And to me, this sentence captures something so deeply that is a part of women of color feminist political practice that has been like vital to all the movements that I've been interested in for, you know, my whole political life. This idea of constant reflection, of always asking, like, who's not here? What's going on in terms of intra-group difference in the group that we're in, like being just constantly aware that we are always participants in exclusions and harms, and not having a notion of a pure political space or of anybody as a pure political subject, and what that is as like a daily practice, both organizationally and for each person engaged in these complex practices of political activism in which we challenge each other, in which we give each other difficult feedback. Like, what does it mean to sort of hold that question the entire time?
Oh, and also...
No, the question you should ask yourself every day, the thing that you should imagine is yourself dying at the slings and arrows or by the sword. That's the samurai way.
Well, one last thing, like, please stop saying weird shit about Blue Sky.
The entire writing staff announced their exits on Blue Sky, which tells you everything that you need to know. And in the eyes of many gamers, this wasn't a tragedy.
One last shitty appeal to consensus before we hit the road, fellas. Okay.
Overdue correction.
Like, of course people don't want to
Why is Elon Musk's Twitter takeover increasing hate speech? Study finds hate speech. What exactly is hate speech on Twitter increased quickly after Elon Musk's takeover? Yeah, but so were I don't know, like the community notes. So, you know, those also came in and did a lot of corrections on, but for, you know, both sides of the political aisle, like to create conversation that is, you know, more honest. Study finds that persistent spike in hate speech on X. Okay, by whom, where, when, where was this published?
Racist, sexist, Nazi platform. That is normal, and you mocking them for not wanting to be on it is like super weird and really isn't helping the claims that people think you're a right-wing weirdo. So just one last thing. Also, play the Talos Principle. Capri-san, please sponsor me. Mushoku Tensei is fucking garbage. Also, I've been watching the rehearsal, and it's might be one of the best shows I've ever seen in my life. Shout out Expedition 33. That shit is goated. And this is a new
good shirt.
And I like it a lot. I like it a lot.
Your aesthetics, like I said, they're good.
Also, thank you to my beautiful Patreoners and members. I recently opened that, and I'm trying to do cool
About
stuff
20 by my count. We got to start somewhere.
with it, like my cool book club type thing, and also other stuff in the future. I'm figuring it out. Like, I want all tiers to get the same shit all of the time. You know, it's just a matter of how irresponsible with your money you are. Depends on what tier you actually pick. But yeah, this is cool. This has been fun.
No, it hasn't.
Kind of.
Yeah, it's been fun arguing with you. I should have probably said more about the lady's quote earlier. The woman, I mean, she's receiving a very prestigious award for her work, but honestly, I disagree. That is like one of the primary concerns. I mean, it is good to think about your community and who might not be there from your community, and your community doesn't have to be just based on your race or your gender or your age or your religion or political beliefs, but it probably is going to be based upon one or two of those. You get to choose your own adventure. That's what life is. So if the people that aren't being represented in your life are not part of your community, then I don't think, unless you're some sort of recruiting person who wants to go and recruit people into your life, I don't think you need to be going that far out of your way to try to get those people represented. If I decide to become born again, and I wouldn't really expect to meet many Middle Eastern people or maybe Indian people. I could be surprised, but there's just certain demographics that I probably would not interact with much more. Now, I'm a table server in by my day job in a pretty big city, so I get to interact with people of all different races and creeds and classes, both foreign and or both international and domestic. So, I mean, maybe I get spoiled on the diversity that I get to experience. Teaches you a lot.
Yeah, next video is going to be not on a weird little guy.
Little guy.
I can't do this very often, or it makes me want to fucking kill myself.
I was longer than I thought. Thank you for watching. Yeah, Expedition 33. All right. Well, that was that.
You stupid fucking bitch. Stay on here.
Well, all right. Let's just. I guess all I have to say to that is family, 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 family. And with that, thank you so much for watching. Please like this video, subscribe to this channel, and share this video with somebody who wants to see what a bad video essay looks like. Thank you so much for sitting through it as well. It was fucking long, too long, and did not deserve to be that long. So please take the rest of your day to enjoy yourself. Okay. Come on. We're doing this. All right, folks, this one might stink a little because I don't necessarily like disagreeing with people. So let's see how it goes.